What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Another new episode of the Last Wave podcast. If you're new here, we deal with topics like ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, conspiracies, ancient history, um, just pretty much anything under the weird and paranormal umbrella. We're probably going to start branching into some other topics too, just some lifestyle. If you follow any of our other stuff, you know that we love nerdy stuff. So we might be doing some of that as well. Check out our other channels under the Last Wave umbrella. You got Last Wave Games. You got our blog, the Last Wave blog, which covers a couple different things. And if you check out our Last Wave blog website, we also now have a Facebook page just for that. We have a section on there called the Archives, which is just really interesting documents that I've found on the internet and throughout, just research and stuff. So super cool to look into. Definitely please do that for us. Real quick, I'm going to run one of our ads for our sponsors. We are working on just strictly local sponsors and building up our local area, helping them grow as we grow. So I'm going to cut to that real quick, a minute or two of your time, and we'll be back to the show. Good morning. What's up, everybody? Just want to take a second to shout out our local sponsor, one of our local sponsors for Last Wave Games and Last Wave Podcast. This is The Spot, Toys and Comics. It's in Newton, North Carolina. This is their Facebook page. They are a toys and comics and, oh my gosh, all kinds of stuff store. They've got games, comics, toys, vintage collectibles, all the way to DVDs, Blu-rays. They've got statues. They've got Gundam, Zoids, Power Rangers, pretty much everything. Funko Pops, and some of the hottest, newest board games that are out, and tabletop games as well as graded comic books. You can see right there. Plenty of Funko Pops, all the stuff you need for Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, all your trading card games, and as well as supplies like comic book bags, comic book backs, all that good stuff. So check them out if you're in the Hickory, Morganton, Conover, Charlotte area. Newton, North Carolina is just a little short drive up the road. Great little store, great local sponsor. Really appreciate what they do. Everybody should go check them out if they get a chance. Follow them and like them on Facebook as well. On with the show. All right, what's up, everybody? We're back. And today we're going to be we're going to be starting a series that I'm kind of excited about. And it came across the other week during some other research. So today we're going to be talking about overlooked historical figures. And this came around because, again, some other research was happening. And I just started pulling threads and random Wikipedia pages, some of the books that I have laying around, just researching this person that was just some random person I never heard of before. And that got me to going here and looking for actual people in history that not many people know of or that not many people have heard of. So that's what we're going to do today. I am flying solo today, as we attempted to record with Buster and Brando yesterday, but it devolved into a day of gaming and and hanging out and just gathering, which is good. It's very important to just get your friends around and just have time to just gather and just enjoy yourselves. But today I'm going to be running solo on this episode, which is fine. Done it before. I'll probably do it again. But today, yeah, let's jump into it. So our first person that is a more unknown figure in history is Hypatia of Alexandria, 350 BC to 415 CE. Hypatia of Greece was a Greek philosopher, mathematician, and astronomer who lived in Alexandria, Egypt. She was the daughter of renowned mathematician Theon of Alexandria, who was the head of a school in Alexandria. Now, her contributions are more to mathematics and astronomy, and they're extremely highly regarded. She made significant advancements in these fields during her lifetime. She wrote on commentaries on mathematical and philosophical works. Unfortunately, most of her writings have been lost over time, but her influence and teachings played a vital role in preserving and transmitting ancient knowledge to future generations. Now, she was murdered, sadly, in a Christian conflict in Alexandria, but she was then seen as a symbol of intellectual freedom and a martyr, really, for the science. And for that time period, I find it very interesting during the Greek time period versus our current time period. There is so much more just knowledge in their teachings than our teachings. You know, you're a kid, you go to school here, and modern day, you learn reading, writing, arithmetic. You learn who won what battles in history. You that's pretty much it. And the rest is, as we know, basically indoctrination. That's basically all of it. You learn the history that they want you to learn. But in Greek schools, it was reading, writing, arithmetic, and I believe it was harmonics or something along those lines, something with vibration and sound and things of that nature. So, if you know anything about science, you know that we are, as people and as our world around us, we are actually, held together, atoms vibrating at a certain frequency. So, theoretically, if my tonal vibration of my atoms could match the table that's in front of me, I can move through and interact with the table. Now, that's not how things work, but in this realm, but theoretically, that is how something like that would work. And the harmonics and vibrations, the music of the spheres, when you talk about astrological and astronomical stuff as well with the planets, there's a lot there, and it's a lot of stuff that's not taught now. So I really honestly feel like kids in Greek times were, or people were taught more actual knowledge, which is kind of obvious, than they are now. But yeah, very interesting. She sounds like a very super interesting person. So we're gonna move on to our next one, and this one I've actually heard of. I've actually known the name, but I really didn't know much about the man himself. Mansa Musa, Mansa Musa, however you want to pronounce that. 1280 to 1337 CE. Mansa Musa was the 10th emperor of the Mali Empire, which is West African, one of the most powerful kingdoms in history, or one of the most wealthy. Widely considered one of the richest individuals in history, Mansa Musa was a devout Muslim, and his famous pilgrimage to Mecca brought Mali's wealth to the attention of the world. So basically, he went on his pilgrimage to Mecca as Muslims, um, as people of Muslim faith do that. And I believe I've heard this story before, and that's where I knew the name. That he was so wealthy as he traveled to Mecca, he would he would give away so much gold to, like, the townsfolk and villages and stuff, that it would basically throw the entire region into just weird economic, you know, I don't know what the word is, an economic storm, if you will, because you're basically taking these poor villages, and he's like, here's a ton of gold. Like, I mean, not a ton, maybe it was actually a ton, but basically that's what he would do. As he would go, he would give away so much wealth that it would just make everything out of whack. And it allowed a lot of people that were impoverished to live better lives. Um, and by doing so, it really challenged the European notion that the African tribes were, were primitive and fought with things, fought with spears and just stuff like that, and were more of a primitive group of people. So being in West Africa, I would assume it was just a lot of gold in the mines and things like that. But it also kind of harkens back to this. We've talked a little bit about it on our channel. It's really popular in our circles of like paranormal and ancient history, conspiracies, that kind of stuff, is Tartaria, which is an old civilization, kind of like Atlantis, but a very old civilization that was wealthy and all this stuff and had so much advancement, what have you. So it kind of sounds like that. Like I understand you have gold. You know, you can have gold, you can dig it out of the ground, but to have that much to where you can just give it away as you're walking around, um, really speaks to something interesting happening there. But his reign, Mansa Musa's reign as king, also saw the expansion of trade, obviously, and the promotion of education and scholarship within the empire. So not only was he famously wealthy, he actually did good things, which is rare for the famously wealthy people. Um, so I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I've heard the name before, along with that story of him giving away so much gold, it basically ruined, or not ruined. I wouldn't say ruined. It definitely changed the economic outcome of certain areas. But moving on, it's a very interesting story. We have Ibn Battuta. Was a Moroccan, and it was a 1304 to 1368 CE. Ibn Battuta was a Moroccan scholar and explorer who often regarded as one of the greatest travelers in history. This was crazy. I'd never heard of this guy before. But his journey that lasted for over 30 years, a 30-year journey covering a distance of around 75,000 miles across Africa, the Middle East, India, Southeast China, or Southeast Asia and China. His travel log, known as the Rila, provides valuable insight into diverse cultures, societies, and political landscapes of the regions he's visited. Batuta's accounts played a crucial role in expanding knowledge about the medieval world and fostering cultural exchange between different civilizations. Now, I think that is just insane that we've never heard of this person. In my research, I've got plenty of history books laying around here. I've watched History Channel since I was like 10, and never in my life. I want to read that. The Rila. I need to look into see if that's an actual like thing that's still around. Like, I mean, obviously that's from a very long time ago, but if it's been translated, that'd be extremely interesting to read and to look into. But again, just someone who's like very, very important and did something insane. 75,000 miles in a journey of 30 years. I mean, that's absurd, and we've never heard of. At least I haven't. But yeah, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Let's see. Up next, we've got Sophie Scholl, and I think that's Scholl, Skull, Scholl. Anyway, 1921 to 1943. Sophie was a German student and anti-Nazi political activist during World War II. Along with her brother Hans and other members of the White Rose Resistance Group, they were able to distribute leaflets calling for active opposition to the Nazis. Sophie and her brother were arrested in 1943 and subsequently executed for their resistance activities. Again, a person we've never heard about. Sophie and her brother were arrested in 1943 and arrested and executed. Their courage and unwavering commitment to their principles in the face of extreme danger have made them symbols of resistance against oppression and injustice. Uh, Very interesting person. Never heard of her. And someone who actually, I mean, imagine, put yourself in those shoes. You're in Nazi Germany, stuff's coming up, and you think about the people that are quote unquote protesting these days and what they're actually protesting, how it honestly is just so pointless, and they look like a bunch of idiots most of the time, sitting out there yelling and holding signs. While these people, historically, and it's very funny. We don't know anything about anyone who stood up against the Nazis. You know who we've heard of? Anne Frank. They hid in her attic, and if she hadn't kept a journal, never would have heard of her. So isn't that very interesting? And listen to my words here. Isn't it interesting that we've never heard of a lot of these people that stood up against the actual Nazis? And history is written by the victors. Listen to what I'm saying. But anyway, very interesting person that should definitely be talked about and taught about in schools. An actual symbol of freedom and fighting for what you believe in. Not like a lot of these people nowadays. Um, Up next is 1433. That can't be right. Zheng He, uh, Zheng He, Zhenghe, 1371 to 1433 CE. Zheng He was a Chinese mariner, explorer, and diplomat who commanded a series of epic voyages in the early 15th century. Under the orders of the Ming Dynasty Emperor, he led a massive expedition that reached as far as East Africa, exploring and establishing trade relationships with various countries and regions. These expeditions involved enormous fleets of ships, including massive treasure ships that were among the largest wooden ships ever constructed. Zheng He's voyages expanded China's influence and maritime power, promoting trade, cultural exchange, and diplomacy. Despite the remarkable achievements and influence of his expeditions, his story and the impact of his explorations has been relatively less discussed outside of China. So again, another person, yes, it's a Chinese story. I'm sure they're taught about it in China. But again, another story of another person who traveled, you know, forever and did amazing things, and nothing. We're not taught about them. So it just blows my mind that these people have done so much, and we have no idea who they even were. Like, no idea. So I just thought that was super interesting. Um, but let's pull it back. I'm probably talking too fast. It's only been 15 minutes. Supposed to make this whole thing last. It's easier when I have the guys here to bounce stuff off of. But let's take it back to the person that started this whole thing, um, and started me on this little path of stuff of finding ancient history, and that's Simon Magus. Now, I was actually listening to an audiobook on the life of Jesus, and it mentioned this person Simeon who greeted Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus at the temple when they came. Gosh, where was it? I don't remember what's it, Jerusalem, Israel. Anyway, greeted them at the temple and held baby Jesus and basically like almost sung to him and declared that he was the Messiah. He had finally been found, etc., etc. And it never tells how old Simeon is. And I had never heard that part of the Bible. I never heard that story, so I decided to look into it. Start pulling threads. On one of the pages at the bottom, it says also see, and then it says Simon Magus. Now, obviously, Magus, Magus, meant, I know that, means either magic, magician, sorcerer, that kind of thing. So, of course, I got to click on that. And it takes me down this rabbit hole about this guy named Simon Magus. And also known as Simon the Sorcerer or Simon the Magician. He's a figure mentioned in the New Testament of the Bible and in early Christian writings, apparently. He is often considered one of the earliest known practitioners of magic and sorcery within the Christian tradition. However, it is important to note that historical information about Simon Magus is limited, and much of what we know from him comes from Christian sources that viewed him in a negative light. So, obviously, again, I find that to be very interesting, and that's why this is a rant segue. Everyone should write. Everyone should learn how to write, and even if you don't write well, grab yourself a cheap notebook or a journal and start writing, because that one day there's going to be an EMP or something, and all this electronic mess is going to be gone. And the only historical way that you can give your story is by writing it. Um, when if you have kids, especially, make notes during their life and leave them in a book that they will see eventually. Stuff like that. You want people to eventually see your point of view on your life. Because in 20, 30 years, 40, 50, whatever, the impact that you made may not be there. But if you write, there was something physical will be left. So that's just my 2 cents. Obviously, it's not like a life or death situation, but that's just my 2 cents. Anyway, according to the Acts of the Apostles in the New Testament, Simon Magus was a resident of the city of Samaria, uh, who practiced sorcery and claimed to be someone who was great. He also, he claimed that tell his followers that he possessed the powers of God, which people led to refer to him as the great power. And he did more than that. He claimed that he was the Messiah. He claimed that he was, the one that spoke to the Israelites. I mean, he was saying a lot of things. When the apostles Peter and John arrived in Samaria, they proclaimed that the gospel and performed miracles, which led many of Simon's followers to convert to Christianity. Simon Magus himself also became interested in the teachings of the apostles and was baptized. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. He was baptized even though he was a magician and sorcerer. However, according to the biblical account, he later attempted to purchase the power of the Holy Spirit from the apostles, offering them money. Peter strongly rebuked Simon for his misguided attempt and warned him to repent. The story implies that Simon Magus was motivated by a desire for personal power and influence rather than genuine faith, which is true. Well, again, it's true based on what we know, from who we know it from. Now, outside the New Testament, there are various early Christian writings that mention Simon Magus and provide additional details about his activities. These writings, such as the Clementine Homilies and the Recognitions of Clement, portray Simon. I don't know what those are. That would be interesting to look into. I'm just taking notes on what I'm reading notes on what I read and what I have down. But I do need to do further reading. Again, here you just start pulling threads, and who knows what you might uncover about some history. But anyway, they portray Simon as a significant adversary of the apostles. Now, this is more what I read is that he was vastly against them. He is depicted as a false prophet who seeks to establish his own religious system and compete with early Christian movements. The portrayal of Simon Magus as a sorcerer and false prophet influenced later Christians, and thought that was what led to his vilification. Early Christian writers such as Justin Martyr and Irenaeus condemned him as a heretic and considered him the founder of a heretical sect known as Simonianism. The sect is believed to have combined elements of Gnosticism, magic, and early Christian teachings. And there is some very interesting stuff about that, and they think that he was one of the first ones to really bring forth Gnosticism. And there's even a story, I believe it was Peter, was one of the apostles, and Simon Magus did a miracle. He flew, he levitated in the air. And I can't remember if it was Peter or John, but one of the apostles saw this and prayed, and Simon basically said, if your God can make me fall down, then he is better than I, or something along those lines. And the apostle prayed, and sure enough, he fell splat. He wasn't high up, but he probably sprained an ankle. he was high up enough to make it uncomfortable when he fell. So a very, very interesting person. Again, it can be interesting. It can be difficult to portray the real him when it's just Christian writings that we know of that are what we know him from mainly. Again, it's also thought Simonianism kind of evolved into Gnosticism. He had a crazy, well, I guess you could say crazy. It's all crazy, but he taught that um, when God had his first thought, it was a feminine thought, and that was Sophia. Which, if you're around the occult, you know, paranormal stuff, you may have heard the term Sophia, which is like the name for overall consciousness in the universe. And this thought, or Sophia, was God's first thought, and that's where we get that theory from, is that Sophia is this consciousness, and this consciousness, or Sophia, uh, the angels created Earth as a prison for her, and she came down into the layers. So you have, if you look at the old occult texts and Kabbalah, Gnosticism stuff, they show these layers basically of heavens coming off of Earth. So she came down into Earth, and this is her prison, and this is where she's kept. And if you look at the theory that we're all connected by consciousness, then we are all aspects of Sophia, and this is our prison that we're in, which is, and then the upper levels, or heaven, would be, escaping this prison, more or less. That's kind of the theory. That is I don't have the book in front of me, really probably dumbed down description of it, but it's the best way I can make it palatable for anyone who hasn't heard it before. That is what he taught. That was the theory. And he actually went on. I remember another thing I was reading on him. He had, women around him, and he would claim that he would have a woman, and she would be, I don't remember what the word is, basically his Sophia, his, concubine, but also his um, vessel, or something like it. There's a lot of stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff on this guy, and he was a very, very, very interesting person. Let's see. What else can I pull up while I got my research notes open? We're doing some behind the scenes, some stuff here. Real quick, if you're with us to this point, thank you. Thank you for being here, and we love you here at the podcast. We love you, and we appreciate you, and everything that you do, we're thankful for. We haven't put a lot on our Patreon lately, but a Patreon does help, and we don't really have any, we don't make any money doing this. This is a hobby. We have sponsors, but honestly, it's really to help them and help us grow at the same time. It's not, we're definitely not paid well enough to do this on our own. But yes, let's see. I've tried to pull up some more notes that I had. Let's see here. Simon Magus was known to practice magic and sorcery. We know that. According to, he performed feats that impressed his followers, such as levitation and illusions. Now, I would love to know what illusions he had actually done. I know the levitation story. His displays of power and charisma attracted a significant following, and he was regarded as a supernatural figure by his devotees. And again, it's very interesting that we have this man who claimed that he was the Messiah. He claimed that he was Jesus. He was, all these things. And, again, sounds crazy, but we only know him from people that didn't like him. So that's very interesting. And when he did meet the apostles, Peter and John, it was a significant turning point in his life, though. After witnessing miracles performed by them, he was captivated by their spiritual authority and sought to align himself with their movement. He got baptized, but he did that allegedly just to appear, as though he was part of it, so he could learn and offer them money at a later date for apparently their stuff, their power, he claimed. After the encounter with the apostles, though, Simon continued his activities, but in opposition to the Christian movement. Early Christian writers, again, regard him as a person of heresy and a founder of the different sect known as Simonianism. It was viewed as a deviation from Orthodox Christian teachings. Let's see. It is worth noting that historical existence and actions of Simon have been subject to scholarly debates and interpretations. Some scholars argue that Simon may have been a composite figure created by early Christian writers to symbolize the conflict between Christianity and competing religious or philosophical movements at the time. Now, I find that little tidbit to be very interesting. That because the Bible is the greatest story ever told, right? So it was written as a historical story, but is it all true? Is it, this and that? That can be debated. That has been debated for years and years and years and years. I'm not here to say. I'm just describing this one person's alleged life. Um, and I'm going to bring it all the way back to what first um, brought me to Simon Magus, and that was Simeon. Now, again, in the Bible, it never says how old Simeon is. So, mentally, it shows him as an old man um, as he's holding baby Jesus. But I kind of find it funny, like, that's the image historically. But since they were connected online, since it led me to that person, it almost makes me think that maybe Simon and Simeon are the same person. And that Simeon grew into, or because if you go to the etymology, Simeon turns into Simon, and they may be the same person. And then when baby Jesus comes into the picture, and things start to change, then we have this rise of this Simon Magus person. So again, my timeline may be a little bit off, but I thought that was very interesting that they could possibly be the same person. I'm not a Bible scholar, and neither is Buster and Brando. If they were here, we've read it. We've read enough to be interesting and to know interesting things. But again, I kind of thought it would be very, very, very interesting if that was the same person, someone who not only proclaimed that Jesus was the Messiah, but then went on as times changed to say that he was the Messiah. He was God. He could do all these things. He was telling people how the world actually began. Um, but yeah, he could have been a complete. He could have been like a fable or a fable, a moral, one of those things. Portrayed as a cautionary figure, showing the dangers of listening to false prophets and the pursuit of personal power, the distortion of true faith. He could have been more of a cautionary tale created, but we'll never know. Maybe we'll never know. I don't know. But that was something I wanted to do. I thought it was very interesting to go back throughout history and just see some people that we've never heard of. I'm definitely going to continue this series. I definitely think we 100% should. I think the guys will enjoy it when they get back to recording with me. And I hope everyone else enjoyed it. Today's going to be a fairly short episode, about 30 minutes. But I honestly, as always, am very thankful for anyone who's listened. If you made it this far, especially, thank you. I know it can be a little bit tough when it's just me. But as always, here at the podcast, we thank you. We love you. Go with love. Go with kindness. Kindness for yourself. Kindness for others. Help each other. Um, we're all people. We're all humans. There is very little differences in us. We are humans. We are people. And we're meant to be together. We're not meant to be tearing each other apart. We've been doing it for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. That's enough. We've evolved. You would think. Maybe we haven't, but we need to. But that's all I got for today. Be good to yourself. Be good to others, and we'll figure out a way to get through all this. Take it easy. We'll catch you on the next one.